Thank you. Am I
You're loud and clear.
okay? I was trying to get off of mute there. I want to say I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm also grateful for your partnership through all of these years. As we mentioned in our bit of our pre-conversation here, I'm not sure how long, but probably 25 years, maybe longer. Your congregation has partnered with us in sharing God's word all over the world. I want to read from Romans chapter 10, beginning with verse 11. The writer says, "For the scripture says, whoever believes in him will not be disappointed. For there's no distinction between Jew and Greek. For the same Lord is Lord of all, abounding in riches for all who call upon him. For whoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. How then shall they call upon him whom they've not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they've not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they be sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring glad tidings of good news." You find yourself in this passage somewhere. Every Christian is in this passage. You're either going, you're sending, you're praying for, you're evangelizing, or you're being evangelized. Our work for the last 30 years has been primarily a work of bringing people together. We have taken, or have gotten credit, I should say, not taken credit, but have gotten credit for a lot of things that really other people did. I just have been instrumental in helping to bring people together who had special talents, who were willing to go and do special things. My dream is that someday every Christian, it would be great to have a database with all of the people who are members of the Lord's body that would tell us what their hobbies and their professions are, and have access, a way of contacting these people in order to help them become a part of world evangelism. There's a need for almost every talent that everyone has somewhere in the world in evangelism. I'm told that in India, and I haven't worked there, but I'm told by those who do that if you can sew, some of our older ladies particularly, you could provide a tremendous service by simply going to India to some of the villages and teaching women how to sew. You could change their life. They could set up small businesses. Almost any skill that a person has can be used in evangelism if there's a plan and it's set up so that what is done is directed toward evangelism. I'm grateful for your partnership. The great news that I got this morning, and I want to share with you first, and that's from Gerhard Krasnick. Some of you know Gerhard in Vienna, Austria. Gerhard sent out a message this morning saying that 5 more previously Islamic refugees have obeyed the gospel and are meeting with brethren in Austria. They've baptized more than 150. I've lost count. But there are 6 congregations at least made up of these previously Islamic people who have obeyed the gospel. And they're meeting all over Austria. Gerhard is making, every week, he journeys all around Austria to different cities to meet with these brothers and sisters, to study with them and teach them the gospel. I want you to especially include them in your prayer list. They need help. They're young Christians. Gerhard thinks most of them are very sincere. They're bringing their friends to Christ. These 5 that were baptized this week, he said, were all brought by new brothers and sisters who had brought their friends and saying they need to hear the gospel. So remember that work as you pray for people around the world. Jeff has asked me to kind of bring you up to date on some things. I want to give you a little bit of history. I spent 20 years in Germany, and we worked in Wiesbaden and Bremen and Mannheim. We spent 10 years after that organizing medical missions, conducted more than 200 medical missions, bringing medical teams from the US and Europe together, taking them to primarily the Caribbean and South America. I think we took 6 to Africa in cooperation with in West Africa, working with Brother Doyle Key, whom you know. And these were all evangelistic missions. Had one young couple from Zurich who came and participated. The Sooters will remember a nurse from that congregation. We always called that church the Church of Nurses because they had so many nurses who were members. But this was a great work, and we helped train congregations to put their own teams together, and many of those are still going. The last 19 years we have spent in Asia. We spent 4 years in Myanmar. You heard me praying this morning for the church in Burma, in Myanmar. The church there has undergone tremendous persecution throughout the years because of the government. They're afraid to talk to anybody about the gospel, because if they talk to a Muslim or a Buddhist and they report them to the police for trying to teach them, they can be imprisoned. And some of our brethren have been in and out of prison for doing that. They are allowed to meet, but they're not supposed to invite any non-Christian to their meetings. But in spite of those restrictions, they've been able to continue to meet and to worship and to grow. In 2000, the year 2000, there was a terrible cyclone. We remember me reporting about that. Cyclone or Hurricane Nargis. And as a result, I encouraged the brethren there to take advantage of the opportunity to begin immediately taking relief to the area. It was in the South Delta region, where the population is 100% Muslim. There are no Christian groups of any kind there. And so as a result of that work, there are now 10 congregations meeting there, and they continue to meet together and to grow. This has been a wonderful work. It's really been amazing to me because they've had very little assistance. Brethren from Yangon go down about every 6 weeks, but it's a 12-hour bus ride about every 6 weeks, and meet with them, bring several congregations together and meet in about 4 different places. But the church has continued to grow down there. In Cambodia, we were asked by a brother, Bob Berard, who was the first missionary to our knowledge, to go to Cambodia. Bob went there in 1998 when the revolution still wasn't completely settled. We went in 2000 and took Bob some money to do flood relief. They had a massive flood that devastated the country. Over 80% of the country was underwater. Cambodia is like West Texas. It looks like somebody ironed it every morning, and it's flat. And when the rivers get out of their banks, there's nothing to stop them. And so they just go and go and go. Well, as a result of Bob's work, I encouraged to preach the gospel as he had opportunity. There were 2 congregations established, and Bob asked us then in 2003 to come and to assist him. Bob had been successful in reaching rural people, peasantry, most of whom had almost no education, and he was concerned about leadership in the church. And so he said, how can we reach some young people who have leadership ability? And I said, well, one way that's been very effective all over the world is teaching Bible lessons in English. And so he asked me if I would come and help him get that set up. And we said, yes, Bob, we'll go for 6 weeks. For 6 weeks. Well, that 6 weeks has turned into 19 years. Bob died about 3 months after we arrived. He was killed in a fatal motorbike accident. He was out preaching on Sunday afternoon. He preached in 4 different places, and he'd go from village to village, and had an accident and broke his neck and died immediately. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, well, what now? We realized that those new young congregations probably would not survive unless somebody stayed to help them. And so we said, we'll stay, talked to our elders, and they were in agreement. And we'll try to recruit some other younger missionaries who can come and learn the language and work with the people. And then we'll go on back to the US and continue doing other things that we're involved in. Well, it was difficult to recruit people. We did finally recruit a few people, and there are now, I think, 4 missionary couples, maybe 5 in Cambodia. And of course, the church in Cambodia has grown from those 2 small congregations in 2003 to over 70 now. And it's not been primarily due to our work, it's due to the work of everyone who's worked together and been involved. We have a very good cooperative brotherhood there, and churches cooperate well with each other, with very few exceptions. And the church is growing. Just last week, they had a seminar and invited all the congregations to come. About 200 people, I think, joined the seminar. And they introduced people, made a picture of them. Maybe I can send that to you later. People who'd been in the Khmer Rouge. Some of you who are older will remember the Khmer Rouge. It was the French name for the Communist Party, the Communist Cambodian Party. And they had a terrible tenure of about 3 years in which they massacred about 1/4 of their own population, and recruited young teenagers. They were going to build a utopia, the communist line. And the only way they thought they could do it would be to kill everybody off and start over. And so if you were educated, that meant you were probably going to get shot. If you wore glasses, you were in danger because that meant you could read. And so some people threw their glasses away or hid them. But last week at this seminar, the brother who was hosting it asked all the people to stand who had been members of the Khmer Rouge army, and 10 men stood up. They're now Christians. He asked all the men to stand, or men and women to stand, who were members of the opposition, and about 10 of them stood up. And then he asked them to stand together, and he put one Khmer Rouge with one of the other army and so on, and made a picture of them to show that they have fellowship and joy in the Lord together. That's a tremendous story and a great encouragement to me. But that shows you the impact of the Lord's church. One of the things we did, which you know about, was the Ship of Life. We first tried to do some things in Vietnam. Brother Maurice Hall, who some of you know, who started the first works that we're aware of in Vietnam and during the Vietnam War in the 1960s. Maurice never forgot Vietnam till the day he died. He prayed for them. He tried to get people to go to Vietnam. He stayed after me for 10 years. He said, I think if you would go and talk to the government, maybe we could get some freedom for the brethren there, because the church there is still very much oppressed. And I put him off all those years. I said, Maurice, they're not going to listen to me. Who am I to go and to talk to them? Finally, he kept after me, and I said, okay, if you'll go with me, I'll go. So he went, and we went and talked to the health department. We thought we had everything set up. We even had a couple recruited to move there. They were medical people. They were lab technicians, both of them, Pam and Randy. I'll think of their name in a minute. But anyway, they'd worked in Albania for about 2 years teaching world English. And the government wanted somebody to go to Kamau, which is the far southern province of Vietnam. And they said, we have seminars that are taught by foreigners in English for our medical staff, but you have to speak English to attend. And our doctors down there do not speak English. We need somebody to go. Well, Randy and Pam are ideal because They knew medical vocabulary. They were both lab technicians. And they said, we'll go. We even went down there and picked out a house for them. They went with us. And then the government in Hanoi, the local government, was excited about our coming. But the government in Hanoi, the hardcore communists, said no. And so that didn't work out. Well, we saw, though, God showed us some things. The Delta region of Vietnam is just little islands with water everywhere. But these people are boat people, literally. A lot of them live on their boats, and they travel between islands on their boats. And so I asked, well, what kind of health care do these people have? And they just kind of smiled. They said, almost none. Unless they can get to a city, they don't have any. And I said, well, would it be good to have a boat that was a clinic and could go to them? And they said, that'd be wonderful, but we don't know how to do it. And so I thought, well, maybe that's a way to enter Vietnam. And Maurice was excited, as you can imagine. And so we began to work on that, but they still said no. So we took that idea to Cambodia, because Cambodia has a population now of about 15 million. About 5 million of those people have almost no access to health care. And they're people who live on the waterways, the rivers and the streams, all over Cambodia. And so we talked to the health department officials there, and they said that would be wonderful if you could do that, and encouraged us. So that's how the Ship of Life came to be. It was in the water. It served people for 11 years. And then the prime minister, who is very anti-American, anti-Western, decided he was going to shut down all the NGOs, the non-government organizations, humanitarian organizations that were Western. And the way he went about it was, he said, if you've received any funds from any Western governments since you've been in Cambodia, then you have 48 hours to get out of the country. Well, this was devastating, as you can imagine. He shut down big organizations like CARE, even from the United Nations. He shut down World Vision. He shut down Save the Children's Fund. And they came to us, and I said, we've never taken any government money. And I was so thankful we hadn't, because we've been encouraged by some of our brethren to apply for USAID money. And I think we qualified and could have gotten it, but we didn't need it. And I always said, I don't want the government in my hip pocket. And it proved to be the right decision in that case. And so I told them, I said, we've never taken any money. And they said, well, you need to verify that to prove that. And I said, well, how? I'm not going to give you a list of my donors if that's what you're asking for. And they said, no, you need a letter from your board of directors. Well, that was easy, because that's our elders. So I sent our elders a letter that I made up and sent to them and explained the situation to them. And they signed it and sent it back. We sent it to the government, and the government accepted. And so I thought, well, we're home clear and free now. Well, we were for about 6 months. One morning, our ship moved every week to another village, usually. Sometimes sooner, sometimes a little later, depending on the patient load. But that was the general schedule. Well, we'd moved on the weekend, and we were at New Village Monday morning, and we opened the clinic, and everything went fine, and people began to be treated and come on board. And incidentally, we treated over 1 million people in that 11-year period. But about noon, the village chief came on board and asked to speak to me. And he said, I'm sorry, but you'll have to close the clinic. And I said, well, what's wrong? He said, well, I don't know. I've received word from the higher ups, however, that I'm to tell you to close the clinic. He said, but it must be some technical thing. And I think that probably you'll be able to open up in a day or two. So I said, okay. So we waited a couple of days and nothing happened. So after 3 days, I contacted my friends in the Ministry of Health. They said, we don't know anything about it. And so they did some searching, and they're all afraid of this prime minister. So they won't talk directly to you. They talk in circles, and you have to read between the lines. Well, the word was that the prime minister and his higher officials had closed us, and because they said the villages where we had worked had voted for the opposition party in the last election. Well, we were we were very apolitical. We had worked hard. We had instructed our staff uh, that when you're off duty and you're not wearing a uniform, you can do what you want to politically. But on the ship, or if you have on our uniforms, you're not to be involved in any political discussions. And we would talk about that about every 6 months with our staff. So we felt certain that we hadn't had any influence on that, but they blamed us for it. And so they never would give us permission to reopen. I can tell you all the things we tried to do, but the bottom line is they never let us reopen. So what happened was we closed the ship. We gave up our NGO status. We're no longer officially registered with the government as Partners in Progress. We're continuing to work there, and we're doing everything else we were doing before except the ship, but we're doing it through the name of the church. And the churches are registered with the government, so we can go ahead and proceed that way. And that way we kind of stay under their radar, so far at least. But you had a part in that. And without you and many, many other people like you, those 1 million people would never had any health care. People waited until our ship would come. We'd make the rounds. We'd go from south part of the country at the Vietnam border all the way to Laos on the Mekong River. And we'd go up on the Tonle Sap Lake, and we'd make the round about every 6 months. So we'd leave a village and we'd say, we'll see you in 6 months. And people would wait for 6 months. Some who were very sick. I'm sure some died because we didn't get back. We had a very good relationship with the local health officials and with the hospitals. There were a number of charity hospitals in Cambodia, or there are, and they let us refer patients to them. We didn't do any surgery on board. Oh, we might do some minor surgery, remove a little growth or something, but no major surgery, no anesthetic. And so when people needed surgery, particularly, we could refer them to these charity hospitals and get them taken care of. People who had cancer, diabetes, those things we referred to these charity hospitals, and they got care, but they would not have been referred had we not been able to see them. So we feel very good about what was done. Almost everyone in Cambodia, if you say ship of life, they know what you're talking about. Because if they didn't see a doctor on the ship, some of their relatives did. And so I've been in restaurants in Phnom Penh, the capital city, where young waiters and waitresses would they want to speak English, and if they weren't busy, they'd come to my table and try and begin talking to me. And invariably they'd say, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I always would just say, "Well, I'm with the Ship of Life," because I knew that would resonate with them. And they immediately would say, "Oh, my mother goes there for health care. My father got dental treatment there. My brother got eyeglasses there." And all across the country, even if they weren't treated, they knew about it. And they knew it was from the Lord's church. There were a couple of congregations established. It was difficult because we only stayed in a place 1 week, and then we only got back, in 6 months. But we know of many people who have obeyed the gospel as a result of having been introduced to the gospel on the ship. So the Ship of Life was a very worthwhile project that produced much good fruit and alleviated a lot of suffering. We had a nutrition project that maybe you remember that ran 7 years. 63% of the children, we were told, under 12 years old, were malnourished. Our American pediatricians who came and followed 400 of those children for 4 years, they'd come every year, said that more than 70% of the children in the villages were malnourished. But the good thing about it was, because these pediatricians from the US came and followed them, they would measure them, they would give them a physical and so on every year, got well enough, got enough nourishment, enough food in reality, that they became normal in their growth rate. And so several places we just said, "Well, we're not going to come here anymore." And they said, "Oh, please, please, please come." And so we would send our crew, but we didn't feed like we did before. We just gave them a little drink of soy milk, and we did activities with them. One day a week they had English classes. 2 days a week they had Bible stories. Another day a week they had hygiene, and so on. So they continued to go back. And there were several congregations planted, I think 5, as a result of that. And you had a part in that. And when you think about not having enough to eat when you're a toddler, when you're up in your early teens, then you realize what a blessing that was to them. We didn't give them all of their food, but we gave them a supplemental diet that was enough to get them back onto the normal growth rate. And without you and folks like you, this couldn't happen. We fed 15 to 1,700 children 5 days a week. We had 5 trucks that went out to villages all over central Cambodia. I think we fed in like 16 or 18 villages and had these programs. My wife, Marie Claire, started what was called a back to school program. We put over 500 children who had dropped out of school. Really, they'd been taken out of school by their parents because their parents needed them to work on the farm. But by providing a backpack and some basic school supplies, notebooks, pencils, and so on, a couple of school uniforms, which are required, and a couple of pairs of flip-flops, the parents would let the kids go back to school. And we had a young man that worked with us in that program, and he would visit every family every semester and would talk to them about how important it was to keep their child in school. The families themselves, for the most part, could not read and write. And so he'd go into the home and he'd take a book and he'd say, I want you to read this for me. And they were elementary school children from first through the 6th grade. And they could read, and the mothers and fathers would be in awe about how they could read. And he would say, now when the government needs you to fill out a form, you don't have to go try to find somebody. Your son or your daughter, you bring it home and your son and your daughter can help you fill it out. That program was so successful that World Vision came to us and wanted to copy the program. Feed the Children's Fund copied the program. They came in and went with our young man and saw how it was put together, and they began copying the program. We ran that program for, I think, 12 years. And then because of logistical problems and so on, we dropped it. They hated to see us do it, but we couldn't keep it going. Vietnam was an exciting, interesting experience. Vietnam is the 14th most populous nation in the world. Most people don't know that. They're approaching almost 100 million population. They're larger than any country in Europe population-wise. They are very communist to this day. Now, the United States government has opened the door to diplomacy again with them, and I'm glad for that. But they still persecute all religions, even Buddhism and Islam. They're anti-religion. They're hardcore communists. They're atheists. They do not want people being taught about any religion. The federal government passed a law in Hanoi that says they have freedom of religion. That's for the Western governments to read. But the local government can interpret it and enforce it however they choose. The local governments have found out that's a good way to get some bribe money. And so they will tell Christians or Buddhists or Muslims that if you'll do this for me or that for me monetarily, then we'll let you meet. Well, the only problem with that is, first of all, it's dishonest. But secondly, there's no end to it. It's blackmail. And if you pay them once, they're going to be back and you're going to have to keep paying them more. And the minute you stop paying them, they're not going to do anything for you. Our brethren, for the most part, a few of them tried it. We advised them not to do it, but a few of them did. And 2 of them, where they did it, when they quit paying, ended up in jail for 2 weeks. They're still very hardcore. And so our churches meet underground. How many churches are meeting in Vietnam? I don't know. I'm not sure anybody knows, but there are numerous congregations. In Hanoi, we know of at least one. There's one in Macau. There's one in Nha Trang. There are several in Saigon and Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh is the largest city with over 20 million population now. There's several congregations, but they all meet underground. When I go to Hanoi or to Saigon rather, and I used to go there often because our ship was built there, and we'd have to go there to get parts and so on. It's only like 150 miles. It's closer than across the state of Arkansas. So it's not a long journey. I meet with two congregations in Ho Chi Minh. They're doing pretty well. One of them, the preacher's wife or the leader's wife, has become good friends with the local precinct policeman's wife. And so it's okay for them to meet. He looks the other way. I'm not sure what the arrangement is with the other congregation, but it's difficult. Pray for them. We're anxious to get back to Asia. First of all, we want to go back to Battambang, where a wonderful work is going. It's now in its second year, I guess beginning its third year. We have a congregation there of about 30. We have a wonderful school there led by Panat and Aya Och. Panat is a Camerican, we call him. He's a Cambodian American. He was born in a refugee camp in Thailand at the end of the Khmer Rouge era. His parents got permission to come to the U.S. They moved to the U.S. He grew up in Austin, Texas, went to school there, went to the University of Texas, has a degree in business. His story is interesting. Am I running out of time, Myron? Yes, no?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. His story is interesting. He went to the University of Texas. His roommate was a Christian. His roommate converted him. His roommate said after they'd been together a while, after Panat was baptized, they said, "Is there a church in Cambodia?" And Panat said, "I don't know. My parents go back to Cambodia once in a while, and I've been several times to visit, but we didn't have any contact with Christians because we weren't Christian." So they began to search and they contacted us. And long story short, he came to Cambodia on his own, got a job teaching at the university, one of the universities in Siem Reap, which is a northern city near Angkor Wat. Some of you have heard of that. It's a world famous archaeological site. Met a lady there, a young woman who was working in the library, Myra, and studied with her, and she became a Christian. She's a tremendous young lady, has great leadership ability, is a dedicated Christian, a wonderful person, and Panat is very talented. They worked 10 years in Siem Reap, have a church there that's self-supporting, self-governing, have a school of preaching there that they worked with that now is run by the local people totally. Panat's still in touch with them. It's only about a 3-hour drive from where he is now, Battambang. He still goes over there regularly and stays in touch with them, which is healthy. But in Battambang, he asked us to come there and after the ship closed down and work with him there. So we moved up there and began teaching English Bible studies and teaching some in his Bible school. He has a Bible school there with about 15, 18 students now. Just recently, he has brought a group of students from the Tampuan area, which is a small ethnic group. Cambodia has, I think, 4 small hill tribe groups that don't speak the local language. They speak their own language now. The younger people have gone to school and learned the Khmer or the Cambodian language. But 4 or 5, maybe 6, I've lost count, of these young people have come to the Bible school in Battambang, and they're studying the Bible there. They're also going through the pastry school, which will give them a trade to be able to support themselves. But we're excited about this because this is the first time for this whole new language group of people to have some Christians or opportunity to hear about Jesus. And so this is a thrilling thing for us. And Panat's going to do a wonderful job. He's done a marvelous job in working with young people and converting them. And we're excited about what's happening in Battambang and can't wait to get back. We're also helping, as you saw in our newsletter, we're helping a number of other people. Since the Ship of Life went down, we've had most of the people, or many of the people who were supporting us, have continued. And so we're not using that money anymore, and we're able to help others. We're helping Gerhard Krosny in Austria, who needs a lot of money for all the traveling he's doing and renting places for these people to worship and so on. We're helping the work in Croatia, in Zagreb, with a new internet ministry they've started that I'm excited about. The local church has hired a full-time person, one of their own, to run this program. We simply are helping them with internet fees and printing of material that they're sending and giving to the people and so on. We're helping brethren in Budapest, Hungary, with an internet radio station, which is a tremendous tool. They have over 200 people listening to their radio station on a regular basis, and sometimes more than that meet with them on Sunday and a couple other times during the week for Bible studies. And they're also making personal contact with these people and offering. The preacher's wife there is a marriage counselor. That's her profession. And so she's offering counseling and helping them. And we see that as a great tool for Europe. You all are familiar with Europe and how difficult it is sometimes to reach out to people, but some of these things are doing great, and we want you to pray for those and know that you're a part of all those ministries. Once again, let me say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I hope I've shared some things with you that you weren't aware of, and it's good to see who you are face to face. And I'm sure some of you are even surprised at my ugly face. When I first started corresponding with Jeff, he said, "Who is that old man?" And I said, "Well, what you see is what you get." But anyway, the Lord's blessed us with good health, and Lord willing, we'll be returning to Asia on the 28th of March. Anybody have any questions or discussion? We're open.
Thank you, Bill. This is Chris. Fascinating, a lot of the work you're doing. I appreciate the service to God in this. I was curious about the Ship of Life that, now is kind of decommissioned given the constraints with the government. And you said a lot of the work is kind of pushed into the local churches. Is there any way that local churches can take up any of the medical work, or is that a problem with the government also?
Yes, that's a problem with the government. The doctors, we had two medical doctors who worked very closely with us. One of them spent, I think, 8 of the 11 years with us. The other one spent the other time. They hated us badly as we did. They're not Christians. We tried to teach them. One of them is interested, very close, we think, but they were as disappointed as we are and have tried to help us. They don't think the government is going to let us do anything because of their attitude. The ship we sold to a brother. In fact, he's a member of the church from Melbourne, Australia. He's a shipbroker. He has a shipyard in Cambodia where he repairs ships and buys and sells ships. Also one in Malaysia and one in Australia. So the money we got out of that ship, we put in the work in Battambang. They needed a facility. We helped them get a facility there. We've helped them with a number of other things, equipment and so on, office equipment, what have you. So, we don't think so. We are going to do some things through some local churches medically, but on a very small scale. And we can't, of course, they're in the towns and cities, villages. We can't get back out to these people on the waterways that need it so desperately. But for example, we have an ophthalmologist in Denver who's agreed to come to Battambang as soon as the COVID thing will let her. She just happens to be a niece of mine, and she's worked with us several times in Africa and the Caribbean, and also has been to Cambodia twice. She's been on the Ship of Life. She's retiring, but she's going to bring her staff, she says, and come and help people with eye disease and fitting glasses. So we can do some things like that. There's a pediatrician in the Dallas area, Shannon DeShazo, who's worked with us a lot in the past. She's much younger, and she's willing to come and do some on-site clinics with some of the churches. So yes and no, but we can't get back to the places where we were.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Bill, I got a couple questions.
Uh,
About two things. So the water raft on Tonal Sap Lake, and also I guess it's a future anticipated air conditioning training program in Battambang. How are those things doing?
The water raft is doing very well. The community there is extremely grateful, and in fact gave us a little plaque not too long ago, a year or so ago, telling us that we had helped their village more than any other NGO in the country. In addition to the water raft, we have this mother and child packet program. There's a little birthing clinic there in the village. They have a local doctor there and some nurses, and they have 30 to 50 births a week there. It's extreme poverty in this village. There are about 10,000 people. Actually, it's 4 villages, but they're all together. About 10,000 people that this clinic serves. And so we found out that many of the mothers are so poor, they don't even have a receiving blanket to wrap their baby up in to take it home from the hospital. So we started several years ago, not long after we started the water raft, providing for these mothers a packet that includes a mosquito net for their infant, which is very important. They live on stilted houses right out over the water. Some of them live on boats in the water. Malaria is rampant, along with yellow fever and Japanese encephalitis. But we provide them a mosquito net. We provide them with some basic baby clothes, some onesies kind of things. We also provide them with a couple of little receiving blankets. I've forgotten what else. That's Marie Claire's project, and she's not here. But anyhow, we give them a packet of things as they leave the hospital. Oh, we give them a little coupon and tell them to come to the water raft where they receive pure water for their infant. And that's helped expand the numbers of people that are using the water. So that's gone very well. The water raft is providing the pins. During the rainy season, a lot of them get the rain off their roofs and use that. And so they don't take the trouble to come to the raft and carry those heavy bottles and go back, which I understand. But during the dry season, which is now, they come and up to as many as 3,000 a week will come for fresh water. We put it in these 10-gallon plastic jugs like you turn upside down on a water cooler here in America, some places. And so that's continuing. We also hand them little tracts, little pieces of literature and material. There was a church started there. The people who were the main leaders moved away. There's still a couple of Christians there, but I don't think they're meeting right now. But the brethren in Simreep, which is only about an hour away by car, they're trying to kind of keep that going and are continuing to go out there on a semi-regular basis. So that project's going very well. What else did you ask me about, Myron? I need to make notes.
Along with the pastry school, at one point there were plans for an air conditioning training program as well.
Yes, that has begun. Started, I'm not sure, September, October, when the new school year started. And they have, I don't know, 7 or 8 young people. There's a couple of young women as well as men who are participating in that. So that's coming along. It, hopefully they'll graduate their first class. I'm not sure. I think it's a 1-year program this fall, but it has begun. And the bakery class is going great guns. They're really doing well.
That's wonderful. I just thought that was such a creative enterprise you put together there.
Well, really, it's Panat and his wife. His ideas. We help fund it. We have a couple of brethren here at our local sponsoring church who worked a lot with us in medical missions in the past. They're both medical people, a pharmacist and a lab technician, and they used to tell people that they did the work and I raised the money. So that's kind of the way it is there. We work with Panat, but we helped him fund it, and the way it's been blessed is just amazing. I think it's providential. When they first begin to think about this and talk about it, we were not living in Battambang then. We were still in Phnom Penh, and I saw an ad on the internet. The expats have a couple of websites where they buy and sell stuff, when they're moving or other things. And an ad appeared on there that a guy had a pizza parlor that he was closing, and he listed all of the equipment that was available. Well, he had 2 of those big ovens, and the ovens that you bake pizza in, the big gas ovens, are the same ovens that they use in Cambodia, at least, to bake pastry in. And so he had those 2. He said they're only 3 months old. He was a young Chinese man whose parents had set him up in business, and he didn't know anything about business, and it had flopped, and he was selling it and leaving the country. And so I went over and talked to him. He gave me the whole thing, the 2 big ovens, which are like multi-layered. You can put like 5 or 6 different things in these ovens. He sold me 2 big ovens. He sold me 2 big refrigeration units. He sold me stainless steel tables. I can't remember the whole list, but a mass of stuff, a truckload of stuff for $4,000. One of those ovens cost $8,000, just one. And I called and I said, "Love, your dream has come true. Get ready. I'm bringing a truckload of stuff." And so it has served tremendously. And then see, I went to, when Panat decided to start the air conditioning school, she said, "Well, I'm not going to let him get ahead of me." And there's a very prestigious French hoteliers school, actually, but they teach how to manage hotels. They teach everything about the hotel business. And they also have a section where they train chefs and pastry cooks. So she went to this school and got a certificate to qualify her to teach pastry. And this is a NGO. And so they're glad that people go out and duplicate what they're doing. And so they've helped her a lot. And so she's done a marvelous work. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hi, Bill. My name is Cordelia, and I think last time we met was in the 80s at Harding. So
Been a while.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for your endurance and for your work, and
Thank you.
it's great. And thank you for being here today. And I just wondered if is there anything one can do if over summer break for a few weeks? Are there any programs where you could go and help with anything?
Yes, I'm sure there are a lot that I don't even know about, but one I mentioned as I started, one of the things that I think I've done best, as you get my age, you look back on your life and say, well, what'd you do worthwhile? And one of the things that I think I've done that's worthwhile is bring people together. So if I can't help you, I probably know some people who can, but I'll keep you to myself first before I spread the word. What you need to do, let me give you my email address. If you got a pen and pencil handy, it's PIP, that's for Partners in Progress, WEM, William Earl McDonough, at AOL.com. It's PIPWEM at AOL.com. Send me an email. Tell me what your hobbies, your skills, your desires are. And let me see, if I can't find a place for you. We could do, you could do all kinds of things. You could teach English Bible studies if you wanted to do that. We use the World English Institute material. You may be familiar with that. If you're not, I can send you some copies. It was written by Brother Dick Adie. He originally wrote it to be used in China as a correspondence course. The Chinese were censoring the mail. It didn't get through. He became kind of despondent. And when we started working in Albania, I said, Bob, Dick, I think we can use it here. So we started using it in Albania, and it was very good, a very good tool. Most of the people who are Christians in Albania were converted through the WI program. And then we took it to Cambodia, and we've used it in Burma and other places. So it's very effective, and it's very easy to use. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not a Bible teacher. Well, you don't have to be. If you can read and talk, you can teach this. What it is you give them their lesson, they take it home. It's a correspondence course. They fill out the answers, they read it, they bring it back, and you sit with them and conversationally talk to them about what they've studied. So it's real easy to do and very, very effective. So that's one of the things about anyone who's a Christian can do. But you may have some other special skills or talents, and I'm talking to all of you. And if you'd like to plug in somewhere, then don't promise, but we'll try to help you, and we'll be grateful for your assistance.
Maybe just a small side note. You were talking about the Swiss nurse from Zurich who went to help your organization. They went there on their honeymoon. That was their honeymoon.
I remember. That's right. Well, Marie Claire and I went on a mission on our honeymoon too, she would tell you. So that's a good way to get started. Well, let me just say that I am grateful for the opportunity to meet all of you. And I keep hoping one of these days I can get up to your part of the country. I don't know when that might be, but we'd love to meet you face to face. And as more and more old friends from Europe begin to congregate there, well, I have more reason to come. So maybe I can make it one of these days. Incidentally, the lady who talked about the European Ladies Retreat, my wife might be interested in that. She's French. Send her the information. You can send it to my email if you would. I think she would be interested in that.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you, Myron.